My name is Jesper Jensen. I brought a little slide set, which I'm not sure we can see from here. But so our company was started a couple of years ago, and we wanted to figure out how can we change the current nomenclature around using connected products and connected devices in the home, from a consumer having to climb the learning curve and understand how to interact with them, to turn it around and have the devices themselves gather telemetry and data, and then program the environment to match the behavior and the needs of the individual. Thanks. So first, I want to show a video. It's made by one of our partner organizations called Cable Labs. They're an umbrella organization that sits on top of the MSOs throughout the world. And you know them as cable providers. So let's start with that video.
Come on, Cookie. I don't know how you're supposed to feel at 86, but I don't think I feel like I'm 86.
Surprise!
People make my world go round. I fear isolation and being cut off. If I am alone somewhere and I had no one to talk to, no one to share anything with, I bet you I would just dry up and blow away. I call this my smart house. We got sensors in all the rooms. I swallow them. I wear them. Doc knows what's going on with me. I don't have to go to the clinic anymore. I call him up. He's not back in the horse and buggy days.
Looks like you had a pretty active week, huh?
I'm feeling it too.
Hey guys, how do you like your ride?
Knowing I got eyes on me gives me the confidence to keep me being who I am, doing what I want to do. Frees me up, takes the worry away. I don't have to worry about Paige, my daughter. Hey kiddo, what's up?
I'm just checking in.
Because I know she's not worried about me.
No,
She's always busy, work and kids. But she can see exactly how I'm doing.
I love you, Dad.
That she knows how I feel before I do. Cookie has become my buddy.
Time for your pill, Jim.
My wingman. Hey, Cookie, what time is that car going to be here?
2 minutes. It's cold out. Might want to bring a coat.
It's like he has a brain. Now, what are you doing, Cookie?
It's a quick...
I have come to rely on him. I know I can trust him, and he's got my back. I lost Ellen, my wife, 10 years ago. So many good times, so many memories. Losing her was really tough. If we had had for her then what we have for me now, she would have been in a much better place. I miss her so much. Here, not too long ago, I was experiencing those dizzy spells. The doctor had provided a scan for me at home, so I didn't have to go out to the clinic or anything.
They have those scans for that patient. Take a look.
And that scan revealed that I had an aneurysm. I saw this specialist, a surgeon, and she explained to me we wouldn't have a messy operation. They inject these nanobots and they go into your system.
Basically, we're going to send in an army of nanobots at the aneurysm.
And they find where the aneurysm is and
Fixing it.
they seal it off. I get a kick out of thinking that I have a whole bunch of nanobots swimming around up here in my brain, doing what they're supposed to do. I wasn't in a hospital. I was back home.
Oh dear.
I was back home where I want to be, where I belong. The help that I have allows me to stay here in my home. Who is that? Do you remember? The guy in the back.
Who is that?
Have my friends here,
That's Pete.
my family, and I don't want to give that up. I don't want to be in a nursing home. The quickest way to lose your independence is to go where you don't have any independence. That's the truth.
All right, so obviously that's part of that is in the near future, and part of it is a little further out. But it shows really well how you combine behavioral pattern recognition with emotional pattern recognition.
Right. Thank you, Jasper. Thank you, everyone, for putting together a great event. My name is Modar Alawi. I'm founder and CEO of Eyeris. We do, as Nicole presented earlier or introduced, human behavior understanding through face analytics, primarily, as well as body pose, action, activity recognition. We like to combine both face analytics and body to provide an overall understanding of humans' behavior in a predictable way. We started off, obviously, by putting together a computer vision AI, if you would, with one of the largest data sets out there from faces. We collected data from hundreds of faces or hundreds of thousands of faces. And then we provide an entire suite of face analytics that spans the 7 universal emotions, age, gender, head pose, eye tracking, blinking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we combine all of that today in a smallest form factor embedded devices, namely automotive, or devices that go into automotive today. We focus on the well-being of the driver as well as the occupants. That's one of our areas of kind of focus currently, but as you can imagine, the technology can be applied to a wide variety of industries and verticals, including homes.
So I wanted to start out with explaining the behavioral pattern recognition side of this video. So this is a key slide for us. We believe that behavior is the next interface. So the way that people have traditionally been interacting with technology and technology services in their homes, the input have evolved from keyboard and mouse to multi-touch on smartphones and tablets, and the latest generation of NLP solutions like Google Home, Alexa, and so on, they're all basically the same. The consumer, the user, makes their input and requests some level of service or action from the system. We believe that we can turn that around and have the system predict what you want to do next. And based on that, we needed to put together a whole line of technologies from machine learning to deep learning to neural networks to accomplish that. So we're really looking at the intersection between connected devices, machine learning, and communication between people. And instead of just looking at an individual, we're typically looking at a target group. So in this case here, the family. Like our name says Home.ai. We developed the technology focusing on the consumer side, but it's obviously applicable in a lot of other areas as well. So this slide here shows how we gather telemetry from the devices that are participating, and that's both connected devices, it's your smartphone, and its external APIs we retrieve data from. And once we find correlation and causality in that data set, we have 3 distinct types of actions that comes out of it. First, we generate a pattern for what we have observed, and then we perform the action. It can either be contextual information, it can be a call to action. Contextual information could be your wife just arrived safely home from taking your son to school. And a call to action could be, please go close the window in the nursery. Too much noise is generated externally. And then, of course, the command data that goes to an actuary, like change the temperature on a thermostat. So in order for us to gather all of this telemetry, we get it from single vector devices or single vector signals like state changes on magnetic sensors, infrared sensors, and through to more broadband contextual signals that comes from devices like NLP solutions. And then a multi-vectored set of data we retrieve from object recognition, both supervised and unsupervised. So there's a lot of data in video streams, and part of what we do is analyze that data, both in an individual given situation, but also using time of flight. And some of the things we establish are patterns. People are very pattern-driven. We can very easily find behavioral patterns in your everyday interaction in the house. But eventually, we start looking for anomalies. Once we establish that baseline, we can tell what's out of place. And that has led us to evolve a system into a system that provides ambient security in the home. So instead of a bunch of magnetic sensors and infrared and you having to arm your security systems, it's basically always running in the background and is looking for intrusion. It can detect fire, smoke, and any anomaly that happens in the home. So the next slide here is going to show what does that look like from a consumer perspective.
Homeai is the world's first sentient home service that learns from the family and adjusts for your life. The always-on home management system works in the background and always knows what your home is supposed to do next. Here's the start of the day for a family about to wake up. It uses all available sensors and devices to monitor the home and senses the family waking up. Grabbing your phone will tell the system someone is awake and correlate that with facial recognition, motion sensors, and light switches to further validate and confirm it's dad. Homeai observes how you interact with your devices in the home, and it builds and executes automation from the observed patterns of usage. Now it's time to turn the lights on, brew your coffee, and even turn the TV on to the news channel. Mom has already left for work. Homeai builds a comprehensive view of your commute patterns and schedule and continuously calculates probabilities of what you will do next. Running out the door, Dad has no need to remember to arm the alarm system. Homeai is always monitoring your home and uses the presence of the family members to determine the degree of notification and escalation in the case of an anomaly detection. You can safely leave your home knowing that Homeai will continue to take care of everything for you. Locking the doors and turning off your devices, including putting things like your thermostat into energy savings mode. Now you've dropped off the kids at school, and Homeai keeps looking out for the kids, establishing a dynamic safe zone, letting you know if they leave school ahead of schedule. Everyone is where they are expected to be, safe and sound. It also lets you know that everything is well at home. Homeai will even do the cleaning, starting your vacuum robot during low energy cost periods. Homeai continues to monitor your home and family, watching for anomalies. Like when your uncle, who previously has access to your home, shows up unannounced someday after a long absence. Homeai decides to check in with you first before unlocking the castle. So that's what starting a day is like with Homeai. Imagine what the rest of the day looks like when you don't have to worry. Basically, it's peace of mind with always-on home management.
So the idea behind showing all of the elements that we have developed to run an autonomous environment, everything is based on our ability to learn the behaviors of the inhabitants of the home. So when you think about how many different types of patterns or rules that we have to generate, it's basically the permutation of devices times the inhabitants in the home, but not just the individuals in the home, also people that comes and visits, family, friends, etc. And so when you take the technology that we have and are able to establish those patterns, it can be applied into aging in place. And this is a really interesting segment for us because the current solutions that are there rarely enables the elders to stay in their homes. There's some more simplistic solutions like a lanyard around your neck with a button and an accelerometer in it. But in order to make a comprehensive solution for them, you really need a wide range of technologies. And one of those is be able to understand their current their well-being and their current emotional state. So it's a huge onslaught of growth in that sector. People live longer. There's a boomer generation coming through now. The cost is going up. It ranges anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 a month to live in a continuing care or a retirement home. And we're trying to address that with the technology. We can do large parts of that, like you saw in the first video, but there are certain elements that we're not able to solve yet. We've found the three elements that really drives this between having an autonomous environment that can look out for the elder, being able to monitor their well-being without putting wearable devices on them. So basically an ambient type of monitoring system. And then finally the communication element of communicating with their friends, family, children, care providers, etc.
All right, so that was a great taste of what ambient intelligence could be inside the home, which is primarily the first living space. What I'd like to cover from an Eyeris standpoint is the convolution of all of these kind of sensors, as well as intelligence devices and intelligence things that come together for decision making. All of this will happen in a car eventually. And as we work in the automotive industry quite a bit for the last couple of years, we consider it the third living space after, of course, the workplace. And if you think about how things have been evolving very rapidly in the automotive space, you have cameras making it into the cabin of the vehicle for driver monitoring, things that the NHTSA and the regulatory bodies have been pushing for any level 3 vehicle of autonomy or more. And that's kind of semi-autonomy. And the manufacturers have been thinking about once one vehicle or once one camera makes it into the vehicle, granted, for the safety of the driver, they can place a number of cameras. So that actually is something that we've tried to preach for a while. And the idea inside this third living space is to enable these sensors, camera sensors, we're primarily a vision technology, to understand the human behavior, the passengers in general. So for the driver, it is something that would provide safety, security. It would, for example, understand when they are falling asleep or drowsy or angry. There is emotional distraction. That's a big element in the driving experience, and we all experience it regularly. And for the passengers, you also have comfort-related features such as ambient lighting, seating, personalizations, etc. And combining these face analytics, emotion recognition, action and activity recognition through body pose tracking. Literally, we could put like a skeleton on a face and we can tell what the person is doing, what's their posture, are they fatigued, are they slouching to the left or to the right, or whatever the case it is. We can draw some sort of conclusion that the person in the car is either, for example, working, sleeping, happy, irritated, or whatever the case it is, and then you have a certain number of decisions either inside the vehicle or outside through third-party mobility services. So for inside the vehicle, you could have the vehicle, for example, transition into a higher level of autonomy from level 3 to level 4, for example, when that becomes available. And vice versa. For the driver, if the vehicle is already in an automated mode, it can actually transition back into level 3 or downsize the automation into level 1 if the automation cannot basically work under certain geographies or under certain weather, or if there's a glitch in a system and what have you. The idea for the passengers is obviously as cars become more and more autonomous, the focus shifts from the driver to the passengers, and the future buyers of vehicles are not drivers, but rather they're passengers. And this gives a whole new notion of this of this ridership economy, basically, that is based on people will choose which vehicle to either buy or rent or lease or just share based on the features that are inside the car. We believe that autonomy will be something that would be considered as a commodity. And the biggest opportunities in this autonomous automotive thing, we believe, is primarily human-centered, and with the technology that enables human behavior understanding, we can help achieve not only safety but also productivity and overall comfort in this third living space. Now, obviously, I focus a lot on automotive because that's kind of where my head has been for the last couple of years. But you can imagine this kind of working out in a variety of environments. Obviously, home is definitely one that comes to mind automatically. And we're really excited for what the future holds, and we're excited for what the type of technologies that both Buster and myself are working on would be able to enable an overall human wellness and hopefully reducing the stress. Hearing just the presentation from earlier, it literally made me stressful just thinking about it now again. But that's kind of what drives us, and what personally I'm very passionate about, and it is definitely from a human-centric standpoint.
So I don't know if we have time for a few questions. I think we do. Anybody have any questions regarding the tech or the methodology? Unfortunately, I can't.
Go ahead, I can see one.
Yeah.
So the question is, how far are we from some of these things, like the aging in the home? And I think that's something that you can...
We're actually pretty close. So when we engaged with Cable Labs, we were not aware they were producing this video. It's a great concept of merging the autonomous home with the advancements in medicine and medical technologies. And so everything that, as it relates to the home, being able to automate the, remembering to turn off the stove or locking the doors behind you, and all of that is available now. What's important about aging in place or elder care tech is that it has to be non-intrusive and non-threatening, which means the elders can interact with the technology instead of having to learn how to utilize it. And also, perhaps equally as important, the technology is able to learn the individual's preferences and routines. So it's available by 2018. It's basically in the final prototyping stage. All the medical components, I can't speak for those. But one of the things that we talked about was the fact that in order for a consumer, a service consumer, the elder, to interact with the technology, often there's a move towards using humanoid or autonomous little robotic avatars, and they need to be able to detect the emotional state of the individual, not just their physical state.
If I understand correctly your question, the e-learning space? Right, so there's an application out there for e-learning. Obviously, it's online courses, I'm assuming, right? Anything where there is an actual screen in front of a person, and that screen is enabled with a camera sensor, and that screen is looking at an individual, it automatically becomes an interactive way to communicate, right? Or enables interactive communication, whether that is in telemedicine or in e-learning, online courses and things like that. What's important is we've obviously gone through kind of a marketability study to think about which market would probably make the most sense to launch at first. And there is definitely an interesting application there where you can understand, for example, what is the attention level of the person or the student, what's their engagement, how many times they move their head around, how many times they blink, what's their something known as overall cognitive workload, how much attention they seem to be paying to what's being said, etc. And I think the findings have been quite interesting. There is still a little bit of work to be done in terms of decision making. The analytics side of things is there. I could basically draw literally 30 analytics on some sort of API board and show you this is what the attention is, and it'll be literally just numbers. But I think what's even more interesting in this field is the data science behind it, where you'd combine academic researchers as well as psychologists in a field to better provide interpretations of what the data is. And I think that's kind of the missing link. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead, please. There is definitely an element of, these technologies are not necessarily meant to replace people, or rather to just automate everything for them and do 100% of the job. It's meant for, making things easier for them, making them much more, the environment somewhat more proactive and predictive rather than action or command-based, right? Especially, in the case of elderly care, there is like disability, and there is all sorts of, things that would prevent one from operating as freely and safely as possible. But it's not necessarily something that will replace that human touch, and I think that's where your question is. It's meant to be enhancing and augmenting, their needs or the solutions for their needs, but I truly believe there is always that social element that's needed, even if it's not necessarily from like one person to another, but also for like animals, which is the reason why we see a lot of elderly people have companions. So it is meant for augmenting and enabling more of freedom, if you would, and accessibility rather than replacing it and pushing towards loneliness.
It's all about safety and awareness. So the elders, they do not want to move into a retirement home. They don't want to give up the independence. That's the most important thing for them. And if they're unable to, either due to cost or due to other circumstances, they're unable to live in their own homes, this may be able to extend that capability and also and always monitor any anomalies like a fall, or they didn't take their medicine, or something else happened in the home that needs immediate attention. So it's not just a matter of people being there all the time. It's instead of focusing on all the safety elements, they can have quality time together instead. And so I think it's a very positive development.
Yes.
I appreciate some of the scenario development work you have done, but I'm very concerned that it's very Promethean or utopian without worrying about the concerns of security and privacy and intrusion. I can envision an Equifax type data breach, And we already are beyond hassle level of getting calls from Microsoft service or Apple service in India, call this number, or people having their computers taken at ransom. But what now if it's their home, or intrusive types of calls, or marketing for products that impinge on areas of privacy that most people would not want to share? What are you doing to address security, privacy, and autonomy issues?
Right. So, I mean, I can speak from a privacy. That's something that I kind of, it's a question that pretty much comes up every time I speak to a group. So there are a number of things that can be considered, right? Technology, as it evolves, it provides, in some cases, as many advantages as risks, right? The privacy thing that you just pointed out to is one of those risks. So we do take that into consideration from a technology standpoint, from an architecture standpoint, where you have, for example, a camera connected to some sort of processing device, and you're taking images or videos of people's faces or houses or whatever. If you're doing that local processing on the device itself, and the device is ultra lightweight, or whether it's a chip-sized device, then there is not even a room for 5 images to begin with. It's rather technology that would replace these. Think of them as security cameras that are more like recording cameras, but transforming them into analytics sensors. So these cameras would look at the environments, people, places, and things, and the output of what it sees is literally zeros and ones, and that's something that's been established for a while. I've been involved for a while with the FTC and some of the guidelines they put around facial recognition back in 2011. And so there are a number of guidelines that if you follow as a technology company, there is literally zero risk. The other thing is, the odd thing rather, is when we see regulatory bodies pushing for technologies like these, we do know that the benefits outweigh any risks. And if you see the NHTSA pushing for placing a camera facing the driver for a level 3 autonomous vehicle, such as an Audi or a Cadillac 2018 models, you do understand that there are greater benefits than risks, if you would. And it is just a matter of adoption. It's regional. Some countries take it more aggressively than others. In Europe, you'd still visit any website in Europe, and it still says, we track your cookies, accept or leave, right? We've gone through that for the last, decade here at least. And it's just evolutionary. So as long as you abide by a certain rules that respects people's privacy, not collecting images or videos, and I think that's kind of one of the most important things, not to mention that other data is not important, then I think we have nothing to worry about. There will always be attempts out there, and that's for the companies that take the data and do something with it. And luckily, at least we're not on that front. We're on the data generation end. Yes, go ahead.
There is there's something known as the Copenhagen interpretation. It comes from physics. That basically says if you observe an event, you'll change it. So what I'm worried about is the AI engine. The AI engine is learning from what people do. Is there a danger that people actually start, anticipating and trying to affect the outcome of what the AI engine is doing? Does that make sense? So right now the AI engine is learning what people are doing, but because people are starting to predict the outcomes, is there a danger that you actually modify their behavior?
Yeah, definitely. So there is a bias there, in my opinion. So we've seen this with Google, where some of the image prediction would say it's actually an animal or a monkey rather than someone from I don't know. An African American or something like that. So there's always a bias, and that comes from who's making that AI engine. They make it based on how they understand things in their head. There is less and less inclusion. For example, there's a reason why women AI technologists are encouraged in a lot of tech companies, so we can also have their perspective and their way of thinking and designing that AI, so it can be a lot less biased, as you describe. I think it's an iterative process. You'd go through it many times until you say, okay, this is kind of more, on an average, if I take a room of 100 people and each one would say, this is how it would design this AI or make this kind of decision rule or whatever, you'd have some sort of standard or baseline, if you would. And in my opinion, it's just an iterative process. But it is very important to include as many opinions and as many design thinkers as possible, so we don't end up with a biased AI, which is a great point you point out too.
I think we have time for one more question.
Our smart homes might also be able to save a person in an abusive relationship or something like that. And I'm thinking about the moral constraints and wondering, I know that Elon Musk and a few other people have attempted to get together to discuss those kinds of things, and it will be difficult to implement across the board, I'm sure. So just a little moment of that. Say something.
That sounds pretty explosive. So the system, it's both capable of obviously you can train the system, supervised object recognition, and you train it to identify specific situations or events. But it also has a notion of unsupervised learning, where it categorizes things or elements it sees or actions that are taken in front of it. So the real question is not if we can detect it. The real question is, like you said, what do we do with that information? Where is it aggregated? Does it call 911? Does it notify a family member, and so on? And I think it really comes down to the individual that owns the technology in the home. What do they want the system to be able to detect? And maybe it's really a matter of offering it up. Should it detect weapons? Should it detect your pet, on the, taking a little action on the floor, and who should you notify? Is the pet standing by the door, needs to get outside? Are there fights? Is it kids? Is it the inhabitants of the home? We're definitely able to identify it and classify it, but that the moral dilemma of who to notify or who not to notify, I think we haven't, at least from our standpoint, we haven't gone through that notion yet.
Yeah, just one thing to add. I think your question pertains to the AI ethics of things. It's a little beyond just anomaly detection or action or activity recognition. You mentioned the fact that, let's say, a couple, one is abusive over the other in a room. Just like Jesper said, if that AI is trained to identify and flag that as such a behavior, then it would. It's not a question of whether it can be done. It can be done. It's more of a question of whether it's proper to flag it as such or not. And that goes into like a question of an AI ethics, which a lot of minds are working on currently. It's going to have to take another panel completely to talk about the ethics of AI, in my opinion.
Agreed. So thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much.